Life is messy, our minds are messy, success is blinking messy. Join me, Charlotte Hopkins, on the Gloriously Messy Me podcast, where I'm opening up hearts, minds, and souls to navigate life's unique messiness. Exploring identity, culture, belonging, and success, I, along with some phenomenal special guests, will be sharing my own experiences, as well as impactful theories and top tips on how I help people unleash their incredible potential to take courageous action and build a life that they love. Okay, let's get on to today's episode.
Hello, hello, hello. I am here like a bottle of shaken pop for my very first guest on the Who Unmessed My Mess series on the Gloriously Messy Me. I was going to say manifesto then, because I was looking not at you and looking behind me, but the Gloriously Messy Me podcast. As you can probably tell, I'm quite nervous and I don't really know why. I guess that's part of the messiness. So my very, very first guest is Shabnam. And we've known each other for probably 2 and a bit years.
Yeah, I think maybe even more actually.
Yeah.
Because I keep losing track of time. If you think about we're in 2023, I knew you before lockdown. And
Yes. Well, we met online, didn't we? And
we met online.
Yeah, and we have yet to drive up the M4, M5, M6, I can never quite remember, to meet face to face. However, the impact that Shabnam's had on my life has been incredible. And when I was looking at the journey that has been gloriously messy, I just knew that the pivotal point was working with Shabs. So it just made absolute perfect sense to allow her to ramble with me. So I'm going to just start, if that's okay, just to give a bit of pre-context to how we came to work together. In the last episode, I shared a little bit about why I've decided to have guests who are experts on the podcast. I told you I was nervous. Bear with me, people. But one of the things that I really realized more than anything is, despite doing all of this self-development work, and I was starting to kind of really connect the head with the heart and the soul, I just felt, and I wrote a list actually just to kind of refresh myself this morning, and I felt that I was missing opportunities. So I was so busy in the process that I felt like I was missing life, that the mind was kind of taking control over everything that I was doing. So I had this feeling of unease all the time. And I remember this word coming to me that was disappointment, and I had no idea where this word was even within my psychological kind of process, because in all intents purposes I'd had lots of success, and I would have been, now that you've said 2023 is making me think that actually I would have been 40, which I thought I was, younger, but hey, there we go. So I would have been 40, and I guess at that point we think it's a pivotal point for lots of people anyway. But there was just this overwhelming loudness that I was missing out on life. So despite having packed so much into the first 30 years of my life, I really felt like I was missing out on stuff. And this feeling of disappointment, that I was disappointing myself and disappointing people, was at the point where I just couldn't get rid of it. And that's where Shabnam came in. So before we talk about the journey of working together, I'm going to just ask her to introduce herself and a little bit about what she does first.
Okay, so yes. Hello, and I'm so excited to be here today, Shabnam. And what do I do? This has been the thing that has been the most difficult to put into a single sentence. I am somebody who works with fantastic human beings who have exactly the same kind of issues. I've got quote marks when I'm saying issues.
Yeah.
Charlotte just mentioned about being successful, having lots going on, outwardly looking as if things are going great, but there's that little something, that niggling something that you can't quite put your finger on. And therefore it's very difficult for me to put that into marketing jargon to say, this is a little thing that I can help you with. But essentially, my background is in psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, coaching, and I use lots of different modalities all combined together to help people who are kind of stuck but don't know why. And it's just helping them to really connect with themselves and figure out what's going on so that they can actually start enjoying all the success that they've achieved and all the things that they've achieved in life, because there's no point, like you said, it's like you've got all this stuff going on, but you're not in it, you're not in your life, you're not enjoying it. There's not that peace of mind, and there's this niggling feeling of like, I want to do this, or do I want to do this? And there's all these other things going on, and the self-doubt and the stuff that nobody sees, because usually, like yourself, a lot of the women and men, I mean, I work more with women now than I did before, but it was a lot of men and women who are extremely successful, very, very driven, very, very ambitious, would consider themselves to be very high achievers, perfectionists in many ways.
Totally.
Who everyone else looks up to. They're the tough ones. They're the ones that usually, and it's so it's almost fascinating to see how there's a common thread between all of them, so different in personalities and what they do in occupation, but the common thread is that they're the ones who find it very hard to ask for help, but they're the first ones to jump in and help everyone else. Everything looks like it's going perfectly because there's this impression that they give everyone that it's so easy to do.
And I can really see where I've done that. So I've done all of the personality tests and all of those different things that come out, and all the kind of buzz things that come out, like human design and all of those different things that tell you a lot about who you are, but it's all really cognitive. And I know a lot cognitively. So the background and professional background that I've had means that I know lots about lots of random shit. But what I hadn't really done is ever sit back and allow myself to feel. And I think it's really typical in the sector that I work or have worked in. I think it's really typical actually within the coaching therapeutic space. And unless you've had good quality training or good quality mentoring and support, or you've actually done the work yourself, you can't take other people to other places. And I really realized that I was probably not only limiting myself professionally, but certainly personally, because I hate and still do. So I'm not recovered in any which way. There's still a perfectionist in me, hence the nerves when I record every single interview. I did training last week, and it's the 23rd time I've delivered the same course to the same organization, and I was still nervous. So I still get that pressure and I still get those wobbles. That perfectionist is absolutely still living in with me, but I've never really processed it. I'd never really allowed myself the time and space to sit and feel it within that heart and soul. And I think one of the things that you did really well for me is help me connect the dots a little bit and re-find my intuition.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things during our first session that we had was this quick thought that came to my mind, is this even going to work? And it's exactly what you said about, you delivered the same training to the same organization 23 times, yet you got nervous. For me, it was more like, every time I sit with someone else that I've worked with, I know what I'm doing. I've worked with hundreds of people, but every person is different. And every time someone sits in front of me and they start talking, the first question that comes up in my mind, even though I've done the work myself, is this even going to work? Is this working? I mean, she's just look at her. She's, because you're very logical. You like to talk your way through. So your way of processing is through speaking it and articulating that. And I was like, for me, it's like, okay, just listen. So I have to coach myself into, okay, stop, doesn't matter. Just go with it, because the whole process is me listening to you and then reflecting back to you some of the things you've said and not realized you've said because they're not very conscious thoughts. And these are things that when you said about reconnecting with your intuition, it's something that we don't tend to do, especially being those kind of people who like to get things done, always on the move. You get a feeling, but you haven't got time for feelings. Like full of feelings. We don't want to get. We don't. We'll schedule that in for some other time. But right now, we need to get on with doing.
Apart from happiness, and like we allow ourselves to feel, not always actually, but most of the time, I allow myself to feel the happiness. Didn't always let it last. So one of the things I think that led me again to you was there was this aspect of it, but I couldn't shift the niggle this time. So I was searching and waiting for like the 20-year-old me to come back, and this loud, kind of energetic, really fast-paced character. I mean, anybody that's listened to any episodes or knows me personally will say that I'm probably never going to be quiet, slow, and not energetic. But I was waiting for this 20-year-old kind of identity that I had to re-emerge, and I couldn't work out why it wasn't. And whereas previously that I would allow myself to feel that happiness. So, you know, you get a congratulations, or you get a well done, you've done a great job, or you get some external gratification. It wasn't working for me anymore. So all of a sudden, my consciousness, I feel, kind of went, right, for sake, you got to slow down, and you can't play youth anymore. And it's a term I use all the time, mainly because I keep having to pluck hairs out of my chin, but that's an age, isn't it? So there was just something that meant consciously I couldn't disregard it anymore. I had to slow down, whether I liked it or not. And I didn't like it. This is the honest answer.
You didn't like it.
No. And I didn't like that I had to reach out for professional help. And like, I'm somebody, it takes me a long time to trust people. And, you know, I was never going to jump straight in. But I knew immediately that I needed to work with you at this point. I knew that I needed you. And actually, I didn't really know what your skills were and your tools were, and, you know, what you knew. And I knew a little bit about your professional background, but not enough. I just knew I needed to work with you. And that was probably the first part of the feeling and the intuition saying, that's the person.
And, you know, you say that and it makes me really curious, as in, you didn't know what my background was. I knew what your background was because you speak about it so much. And for me, it was, you have a background in mental health, addiction, the industry that I've kind of just tapped into. And I've just realized, actually, my battery's about to die because I didn't plug my there you go. We're getting all messy.
Gloriously messy.
Hold that thought. Let me quickly get the charger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why am I not plugged in?
Dead battery averted. So we were just saying about I was saying that when I came to work with you, I didn't really understand. I knew a little bit about your background, but not massively, but I just knew I needed to work with you.
Yeah. And for me, it was that I actually knew about your background in mental health and working with people with addictions and being in that industry that I was fairly new to, because I came from a project management, then going into therapy, then psychotherapy, and then going into hypnotherapy and coaching. And I haven't been in it as many years as you have. So for you to then tell me now that you actually came to me without even knowing what my background was in terms of what did I do and everything, it intrigued me. Like, what was it that made you then come to work with me? Obviously, for me, it was, it was, you know, you coming from the knowledge background that you had and the industry that you've been in. I knew that you'd have an understanding of what we're doing. So there wasn't as many explanations before our sessions and, you know, doing what we did. But I'm kind of gobsmacked that you didn't do a background check on me before coming to work with
this
me.
Is alive, like, whoa, wow. So yeah, and I think when you're in the space, and I know quite a lot of the people who listen come from a similar background to me professionally. They've got lots of experience within that and expertise within what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that's exactly what it is, that we are very good thinkers, we're very good processors. We have safeguarding to consider. We have to make sure that we're following professional boundaries, and we have to make sure that we're building rapport, but yet we're not overbuilding rapport. And there's all of these things within the sector that means that, one, we overthink the work that we often do. Two, we're quite medical model, and I have an issue with that to a certain point, and that's a whole different kind of podcast. But we don't necessarily embrace the human being part of what we do enough. And that's not a disrespect to all the people that come from the sector and go, I work with humans. I get it. I get we work with the human beings, but we don't work at a deeper level because we don't have the time a lot of the time to really engage that. We're also typically not therapists. So when we look at it from a professional perspective, I knew that somebody within the sector wasn't going to work for me because I do not want to be given a CBT sheet. And my, I've got friends who've been given like feeling buckets and emotion buckets, and it's bullshit. We're grown-ups, we're not kids. So I knew that anybody that was going to throw a workbook at me and say, let's write down your feelings, was not going to work. And I also needed somebody who could, one, calm the energy, two, call me out and say, well, yeah, but why are you here? If you know all of this, because I'm a bit of a know-it-all. I've tried counselling before, and she gave me CBT workbooks, and I went, I do this in my own job. I know this, I can print this off. I needed somebody with a different perspective, and I needed somebody who was strong enough in character to call me out. And I'm not sure you really needed to. I think I probably called myself out in the session, but I remember thinking, like, what's the point in putting this resources in, whether that was kind of time, energy, money, all of these things. What's the point if you're not going to allow yourself to use what you need? And you were that safe space that I felt that I needed. That, oh my goodness, I cried. Like, I cried in front of you. I don't even cry in front of my husband unless I really have to. So that vulnerability aspect of it, even just talking about it, it's given me flashbacks to our session where there was a moment, and I wrote down the quote, that I remember you just allowing me to talk. And I said, I don't want to be, and I couldn't say it out loud. And you just ever so gently went, go on. And I was like, God, I've got tears in my eyes. And like, there was like this stoicism just came over me, and I went, I don't want to be a burden. And that was it. As soon as it came out, the tears came, and I was like, oh, I equally love and hate you at the same time.
that was,
and I'm like this, trying to not, ruin my makeup. But it was everything that I needed to do.
Your session was, I mean, I still remember it, parts of it. It was that word that was a turning point, because you were respectfully babbling for ages. Because you were, like you said, a lot. And so you were trying to connect the dots and telling me, I asked you a few questions, and you were, very logically going, this. And then there was something that you said, like when you just said about, you don't want to be, and it's like, yeah, what? So when you slowed down and said that's an unconscious kind of moment that's come up, because when you're speaking logically, you tend to be very firm in what you're saying, and you speak faster, but your tone changed, and it was a very, very much an unconscious moment that something had slipped out. So this was the point where I jumped on it and sort of so when you said the word burden, that was the thing that was underlying, and that's when it all came. And then your metaphors, and that wasn't that, I mean, it was a crazy session, and I won't go into everything because there was a lot of private things, but I mean, that's exactly, what I never know what's going to happen when I'm speaking to somebody, because every individual is different. And like you said, if I was to have a set of questions to ask you, which were already scripted, or if I was to give you, in traditional hypnotherapy, I was supposed to talk you through a lovely hypnosis with suggestions. How on earth would I have known without asking those questions and paying attention to what you were saying, that what your underlying issue is? So how could I give you a solution? I couldn't give you a solution. The solution couldn't come from me. It had to come from you.
Yeah.
I had no idea what had happened in that session with you. And I never know what's happened with my clients. And they go away and then they come back and they tell me stuff. I'm like, that's fantastic.
Like, why? How?
How? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what happened in the session, but something really happened, what needed to happen for you. And it was you know, it was a really great session.
Yeah, and it was. And I am a talker, and I've always been a talker. And I've just recently had kind of genetic testing for like my genomes from a nutrition perspective. And that's been really, really interesting. No surprises that dopamine is something I can hold on to in my brain for a long period of time. So not only kind of genetically is that predisposition, but I know that I get asked all the time, do I have ADHD, for example? Like that energy level that I have is there, and it doesn't really go away, but it does come and crash in waves.
Yeah.
And what I find is that I'm very good at, again, thinking things through. I like to talk things through. I am that person who says, 1,000 words for 10. So I absolutely embrace that part of me. But that's where I think, it was a twisting point, because as soon as I said, I don't want to feel like I'm a burden, logically, I was like, well, I'm not. I'm not a burden, am I? And having the space after that first session to really think things through, I realized that logically I wasn't. The word disappointment, which I came into speaking to you with, completely disappeared. It was gone. I don't feel that, and I didn't feel that at all. And just that first session in particular was enough for me to go, do you know what? I am who I am. And you love it or you don't. I've no doubt people listen to the first 10 minutes of the podcast and go, she's not for me, and I'm off. And I'm okay with that. I wasn't at that point when I met you, or when I worked with you. That need to people please was huge. That's kind of gone, I would say 90% of the time. It's a much more balanced need to people please. And I know people will say, well, 90%, 10% is not very balanced. That's still quite high. Yeah. But for me, that need to people please is not based on the need to validate who I am.
Yeah.
It's a genuine desire to want to help people, not help people because of my ego. And that was a massive turning curve.
And it's not really people pleasing then, is it? Because, as you said, the people pleasing is kind of manipulation, in the sense that we want them to like us, we want to be accepted by them, so they're paying attention to what they want, and then people pleasing. Whereas what you're doing now is being aware of the fact that there are certain needs people have, and now making choices in terms of whether you want to be a part of that or not be a part of that. And it's not really people pleasing, it's just being a good person without having an agenda. Whereas we think people pleasing is a really great quality, and I think in a society it seems to be like, being a people pleaser is you're a really nice person. And it's not that you're not a nice person, but underlying that there is an agenda, and the agenda is that you just want that person to accept you, like you, validate you. So therefore there is some, that you're taking from that whole situation as well. It's not just a case of you're doing stuff for others and you're getting something, you're getting that validation. And when you're able to self-validate and make choices based on your values and what is important to you and your boundaries, and then do things that make people pleased, you're not a people pleaser, you're just a good person with boundaries and not validation from others.
Yeah, completely and utterly. And at one point, really, I hadn't really thought about this until you were just saying, but I remember about 6 months after that kind of session thinking, oh my goodness, I'm a narcissist. That complete swing. And you'll be glad to know that only lasted for about a week. But I swang from that, like, people pleasing to, oh my goodness, I've been really manipulative. I hadn't been manipulative.
No.
I was manipulative to myself, and had been gaslighting. It feels like a word that's used a lot at the moment, but I really realized I was gaslighting myself, and I hadn't been showing up. And I wouldn't say anybody, I don't believe anybody shows up completely 100% unapologetically. I'm sure there'll be people listening that say, absolutely, I do. And maybe, but like, I would love to have a conversation about that. I do think we have different aspects of our personality that we show to different people. And what I realized was that vulnerability I wasn't showing to anybody. And I remembered a quote pretty much almost immediately after going home, because I had the session while I was working in Edinburgh, and I remember going home, and I remembered something on the flight home. My husband had said when he first met me, I was just like an onion, and he said, it feels like the longer I get to know you, the more of the onion layers get unpeeled. And it was probably the first time, even after all those years of marriage, that I was like, well, do you know what, I think I need to start sharing a lot more. And that's been a journey in itself, and probably not for the podcast, but sharing and becoming more vulnerable when you're used to being so strong and independent has done amazing stuff for my marriage. But it's been tough, and he would say that I was a nightmare to live with for about a year, because I was processing all of these feelings that I hadn't really appreciated. And to then suddenly turn to someone and say, I think I'm a narcissist. Do you think I'm a narcissist? Am I a narcissistic wife? That literally came from nowhere for him. So there's that emotional click point is the way that I would describe it. So by saying I don't want to be a burden, took away the disappointment, made me much more logical, because I could talk it through then. I could rationalize where that came from, but then make sure, and I had to be really kind to myself, and I had to sit back and just allow myself to feel, not think. Because I think, you could look anywhere and find the evidence for anything, can't you, nowadays? All you got to do is go on Instagram and change the algorithm, and then you're a narcissist for life if you want to be. But it was a really pivotal moment for allowing myself the breathing space, and that calmness was okay. That I didn't have to be talking all the time.
I remember
that one.
I remember straight after the session, you went, you said you were in Edinburgh and you went to a museum. There was some
the Da Vinci. Yeah.
Then you did a lot of journaling, and then you sent me some snippets of it and told me, and then you asked, like, what do I do with this now?
Yeah.
You were so logical. So the fact that, because it was, like you said, it's a process. It's not like you have this epiphany and all of a sudden all your problems go away and you walk out healed and perfect, then feel great. There's a process of your mind making those connections, and you allowing your body to come along for the journey. So it's not just a case of being in your head, but allowing your body to feel the emotions. And that, I think I wrote quite a lengthy piece back to you. It's like, you don't have to do anything with this now. It was about you now allowing the feelings to be processed. Like, now sit with it, see what happens, do some breathing, sit quietly. Like, how often do most people sit quietly without either their phone? Because it feels like, oh, this is so unproductive, especially our type of personalities who are constantly have big aspirations to do stuff. And it's like, you have to use every single moment, because otherwise it's not being productive. You need to be doing whereas just sitting in silence, and you don't, this isn't about meditation, but you could just sit outside, go for a stroll, do something that doesn't mean that you're still putting a podcast in your ear, or you're listening to music. Just listen to your thoughts for a change. Not necessarily going far away with them and spiraling down like the negativity and going away with it, but just allowing things to come up, and actually then paying attention to how the body's feeling around it. So what are the feelings? Those are the questions. They're not the question of, right, okay, I know this and this all connects. Now, what do I do with this? Like, no,
Yeah.
I know this and it's making me feel this. What's that about? So the curiosity about what's going on inside me. Why am I feeling this? Whereas, I mean, I'm the same. I do this work, and I think about 6 months ago, I actually did a small post. I've been off social media for a while, spending time on me,
living life.
yeah. And the biggest thing is, you know, hands up, I wasn't actually practicing exactly what I was doing, because it's that disconnection where I was very much into, I thought I was very much into feelings, but like you said, it's the good feelings and kind of ignoring the not so good feelings. Some of them, yes, because I've worked through, you know, I've done a lot of work with others to help heal and work through and process past traumas from childhood and stuff. But when it came to other things that were very uncomfortable, I was keeping myself busy. I was working and I was helping other people. And this is the thing, we're working with people that are very similar to you. And this is kind of how social media works, I suppose, where you kind of attract people that you have a lot in common with. So a lot of my clients, we are very different, but there are so many similarities in our personalities and in our lifestyles and things that you wouldn't really be able to tell by just looking at us side by side. So being in sessions with clients and sometimes hearing them say something, and I'm having that moment of, oh, and my process after the session is that I'm processing stuff too. It's like, okay, so maybe I need some help. Oh, do I?
You know, and that process you've just described is exactly why I did work with you, because I do remember saying to you, I can't remember the questions, but I remember asking you a couple of questions and your responses were just like, I knew you'd done some work on yourself. So I knew you had lived experience. And I knew, or I didn't know whether it would be similar to mine. I just knew that if you've done work on yourself and you've allowed yourself that breathing space, that you have some element of self-care. And then from the conversations we'd had, I knew that you would genuinely would protect yourself. And that's probably the worker in me as well, the thinker and the overthinker. And you know, lots of people say to me, but it's not your responsibility to think about the professional. Well, yes and no, it isn't. However, as a human being, knowing what I know, because I've been a professional, I also know that lots of professionals don't have their own personal boundaries. So it was a really important thing for me that whilst I didn't have anything major to offload in the grand scheme of things, I also knew that I needed to work with somebody who was aware of their own self-care boundaries. And I remember asking you, what will you do now? And you're like, just chill, just take some moment. I have no idea whether you were lying to me or not, but you know, at the time is what I needed to hear. And it just reinforced that professionalism, as well as the fact that I liked you. Like, you know, genuinely liked you as a person.
I think, you know, liking each other is very important for me to like the client that I'm working with, and for the client to actually like me, because I think, you know, if we don't have an element of like, it won't lead to trust, and we need to have so much trust in this kind of a professional relationship where you need to feel comfortable to share whatever comes up, and I need to feel comfortable to be able to receive that and then be able to help and guide you to get to where you need to. And if there's so I have had clients, not clients, but people who have come along who might have wanted to work with me. And, you know, it's not nice to say it, but I will say it. But there's been I'm like, I don't think I really like this person. Something about them. Like, it's not necessarily nothing wrong with the person, but there's something where you're like, I don't think I'm going to like spending time with this person. Not that I don't want to help them. I hope that they do get some help, but
it's not with you. It's not with me. Totally.
There's something that's just not right. And in doing the work that I do, what's really important is that if I was to, you know, chase the money, what would happen is that, you know, consciously we might be very pleasant with each other, but you will pick up on the client will pick up on the fact that actually, you know, there's some resistance from her. So
Yeah.
that's not me giving what that client needs, because what I've done then is, because I wouldn't be able to be with that person exactly how I am with somebody who there is a connection with. And it's not to say that, oh yeah, I have to know your life history and we have to be on social media and be friends for ages. It's like so instinctual, where you get on a call with somebody and you either hit it off or you don't. And it doesn't mean that we instantly start talking and we're great. You just get a feeling of sort of warmth or some kind of, like, you instinctively know whether you're gonna, like, it's a subconscious thing, isn't it? You know, from all your lived experience, all the memories and everything that's stored in your mind that you're not consciously processing, but your mind is quickly making, okay, let's go through the database and, like, is this person somebody that we want to hang out with? Yeah, they're not bad. You know, we haven't, this doesn't flag up any danger signals. It's good. That's the starting point. You have to have that level of trust to be able to do that.
And it gets complicated, doesn't it? Because we start to, you know, apply, oh, so-and-so reminds me of so-and-so. And we've got these kind of judgments that sometimes aren't even fair, because we've gone, oh yeah, I worked with somebody that looked or sounded or had the same mannerisms as so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so from, you know, back in the day, and all of these things. So as human beings, we're really complex in the way that we process things. And it takes a really skilled practitioner, whether you're a therapist or a coach or even a trainer, or, you know, whatever modality you if you work with people, whatever modality you use, you have to be able to reflect and go, I don't think I can help this person. And connection is one of the first things that I look for. I want a safe space. So when I look for that connection, I know I need to make sure that there's trust, there's rapport, but I feel safe. And that comes from that connection. And I don't even think that, you know, just because you don't find that connection as a practitioner, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, but, you know, will they get the help without me? Well, actually, that's not your responsibility. It is that other person's responsibility to find the right therapist or coach or consultant or whatever, again, modality. It's their responsibility to find the right person for them. And that's a challenge. So just to kind of, I'm quite conscious of time. So just to like bring the session to, and I feel like we're almost there anyway, because we've got a lot of connection and a lot of similar values. What's your kind of version of success? So when we talk about success, because you work with lots of, like you said, highly productive, highly successful people, who have probably lots of similar characteristics. And I suspect, much like me, come in with one version of success, get Shabnammed, and then come out with another version of success in the best possible way. So I'm really curious from your perspective, what you see as kind of success in your life or for you.
I was thinking on this, and it's one of those things that the definition keeps changing.
Yeah.
Right. So growing up, well, I say, forget it, we won't go that far back, but even say the younger years of being new in a career and success was about being successful in business or in career, and money, and having you know, all the things and looking good and doing all that stuff, and that's where things, like you said, most people kind of, it's the outward societal success that people say, you've got a business, it must be profitable, very, very profitable, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures,
the 6 figures.
Right, it has to be all of those things, and then successful. And you know, you have to be in a relationship, you have to have children, it all has to be all nice and glossy and all those kind of things. See that little poster on the back? So this has been a theme for me for a while now. I took time out of social media when I realized that I needed to work on some things, and I needed to not do this in a public way. So you know, if this is my private journey that I'm going to go through, maybe I'll reflect back on it and speak about certain things, but this was for me. And I'm very much similar to you, where I speak a lot, but I write a lot and I create videos, and I have this tendency to overshare. So I have to create that boundary for myself.
Yeah.
It's time to actually, go into hibernation for a bit almost,
Yeah.
and do the things that you need to do. And the thing that's come up for me more than anything else, and it's taken me such a long time to realize, where for me, it's peace. And, it is peace. And peace, I had that in my headline, I think, somewhere on LinkedIn for a while, with peace of mind. And I hadn't really encompassed all parts of it. And for me to have peace is different for what gives you peace of mind. So
Yes.
it might be that peace of mind for somebody is having a successful business, and it's making, it's profitable, it's working, they've got the kind of employees that they love working with, and things are working well.
Yeah.
Peace of mind, it will give you peace of mind. It could be having that peace of mind. For me, I think it's looking at the whole, and this is how I work with my clients.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it took me so long to make that connection, considering how long I've been doing this. But it's not just about what you're doing for work. There has to be, your work has to be something that gives you some joy, and you have to have some passion towards what you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be the only passion. It could be you're like I used to be, a project manager working IT, and you have no, it doesn't light you on fire, but you love being in that environment, and having the people around you, and it gives you a lucrative income, and you're enjoying the lifestyle, and it brings you so many other things. So it doesn't have to be what seems to be obvious.
And you don't have to have a 10 out of 10 for everything.
No, because
this whole models that are out there at the moment about, pick your top 10 things that you want in your life. And then it's like, how are we going to get you to 10 for everything? It's exhausting trying to balance 10 things at 10 out of 10.
Isn't that where most coaching models start, with the wheel of life? But you cannot have the wheel of life completely balanced.
Yes, you can't.
You have to be able to have some flexibility,
Yeah.
and realize and actually really think about and feel about what is it that gives you peace of mind. For me, I mean, old me would have been completely freaking out, not being on social media for almost 6 months. I'm going to lose all my audience. It takes such a long time to build momentum.
The algorithm.
Oh yeah, it would have been, I would have been freaking out. I've just been really enjoying not sharing my entire life online, and that's where the boundaries came in. I think I learned that lesson in 2020, where as a lot of people, went through some very difficult times, and not having access to people in real life as much as we normally did, it became something that I blurted it all out on Facebook. So it was like I was online journaling. And looking back, it was, I've forgiven myself. I have a lot of compassion for myself for what went on. It was a difficult time, but it's something that I've learned from, is that that's not going to happen in public anymore. What if I want to share things later? So therefore, for me, success, going back to the question, because I ramble just as much as you do.
I could talk for hours and days, I'm sure.
Success is having that peace of mind, and that peace of mind comes from having, feeling contentment and fulfillment in the things that make up my life. So it's not just work and business. It's not just relationships. Also about me, like what, and there's been the whole season of me right now. So it was like for somebody like yourself and others who work in the industry where we are helping professionals, we're helping others. We tend to forget about ourselves. Totally. We kind of, we are aware of it, and we're like, I need to do some self-care. We don't do self-care. Self-care isn't something to do. It's something that, you have to be caring. And it's not about pampering yourself. It's more about listening to yourself and accepting your feelings, getting help when you do. I've been working with a therapist. It's been brilliant for me. And I've been doing exactly, we are probably the most difficult clients to have, because we know what they're doing. So it's been success for me. The definition has at the moment changed again. And the biggest thing that always comes up for me is that I was just thinking how beautiful it is to have peace of mind. And having that just feels so good. And I'm at that place where I feel really peaceful.
Yeah.
So much so I bought a poster that says "Peace be upon you."
Yeah, I couldn't find it. I made my own. And I think that's exactly where I'm. What's really interesting is you said that, you know, the word peace had maybe come up a couple of times throughout the journey. And that was the big pivotal moment for me to where I am really now, and especially from the podcast perspective, is the success is in our mess. And, you know, I'm doing my PhD at the moment, and it's all around the impact of lived experience. And it's so powerful because we see the messiness all the time. We can look back and go, oh, well, I didn't do this, or I should have done that. I need the 10 out of 10 because my coach says I need to score highly. And yeah, they just want you to increase because then it makes them look good. Just saying. But when I look at that contentment, and when I look at that peace of mind, and when I look at success, then ultimately, usually the clues are in our life. The clues of what we want. I knew that I had intuition. I'd used it a lot when I was younger. I just used it a lot in terms of, yeah, you don't want to snog that boy, or you don't want to follow that kind of, you know, friend doing that. But it was also very good at helping me take opportunities. When I pieced together the craziness that has been the messiness, I realized that the success that I'm now feeling and experiencing isn't big and bold and 6 figures. Our business makes 6 figures. Does it light me up? No, I always want more. So that's not what gives me the contentment. And contentment, I guess, is my kind of word for peace. But that sense of, that's the only feeling, and where the words I have to describe it is, it's that sense of it's okay. And it's a really unusual feeling when we talk about success in that way. I still think
Not
people,
sexy, is it? It's not
no, it's
sexy.
not sexy. Yeah.
Why? And that's why it's so difficult to articulate. Excuse me. It's so difficult to articulate what is success, and also to articulate for people like myself who work in this industry with people who are chasing success. I'm not saying it in a negative way, but we all are trying to do better.
Yeah.
But what we end up with that makes us happy, and not necessarily always happy, but gives us that peace and contentment, isn't the money, isn't the accolades. It could be anything. It could be, but you can't quite, like you said, it's like getting that feeling of like,
yeah. And there are no words. I have lots of words in my brain, but I realized over the last few years that I don't have a lot of words to describe feelings and emotions. And I don't have that vocabulary. And as somebody who's quite bright, you know, I'm an intelligent woman, I don't have those words to be able to do it. And that's where that kind of success has had to mold for me. It has. I think success will always change. And I think that's part of the success, is embracing that it always will be fluid and flexible. And, you know, we could probably speak in 2 years' time and we might be, yeah, come on, let's get 6 figures and let's do this and let's do that. Unlikely. I think we're probably a little more zen in our old age.
yeah.
But that definition of success absolutely changes from person to person. And I just love the idea of more peace too.
So
Oh, well, honestly, thank you so much. I think we're just coming up to that kind of hours mark, which I always knew was going to be a big one, because we're both talkers and we've got so much to say because we're both amazing people.
and this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for having me, because especially as your first guest, I no words.
Yes, well, there's plenty of words, and you've been amazing, and the whole just recording is just proved why you were my first guest as well. So thank you so much for listening.